The story of Abraham in the Bible is one of the greatest demonstrations of faith, obedience, and God's unfailing promises. Abraham is known as the father of faith because he believed God even when the promises seemed impossible. His life teaches that those who trust the Lord wholeheartedly will witness his faithfulness across generations. From the moment God called him until the end of his earthly journey, Abraham walked with God through seasons of blessing, testing, waiting, and victory. The Bible first introduces Abraham as Abram, a man living in Ur of the Chaldeans with his father Terah and other members of his family. Although he lived among people who worshipped many gods, the one true God chose Abram for a special purpose. God's plan was not only to bless Abram personally, but also to bless all the nations of the earth through him. The Lord commanded Abram to leave his country, his relatives, and his father's household and travel to a land that God would reveal to him. This command required extraordinary faith because Abram did not know where he was going. Nevertheless, he obeyed. The book of Genesis tells us that Abram departed exactly as the Lord had instructed him. His obedience became the beginning of an incredible journey with God. When Abram arrived in the land of Canaan, the Lord appeared to him and declared that this land would belong to his descendants. Abram responded by building an altar to the Lord and worshipping him. Throughout his travels, worship became an important part of Abraham's relationship with God. Wherever God revealed himself, Abraham acknowledged his greatness with gratitude and reverence. Soon, a severe famine struck the land, forcing Abram and his wife Sarai to travel to Egypt. During this difficult period, Abram feared for his own safety because Sarai was very beautiful. Although God protected them, this episode revealed that even faithful believers can struggle with fear and make poor decisions. Yet, God's covenant with Abram remained secure because it depended upon God's faithfulness rather than human perfection. After returning from Egypt, Abram and his nephew Lot became so prosperous that the land could no longer support both households together. Instead of creating conflict, Abram generously allowed Lot to choose whichever territory he preferred. Lot selected the fertile plains near Sodom, while Abram remained in Canaan. Once again, God reassured Abram that all the land he could see would one day belong to his descendants forever. Not long afterward, Lot was captured during a regional war. When Abram learned of his nephew's captivity, he courageously gathered trained men from his household and pursued the invading kings. God granted Abram victory, and Lot was rescued safely. Upon returning, Abram was blessed by Melchizedek, the king of Salem and priest of God Most High. Abram gave him 1/10 of everything, demonstrating honor toward God's priest and acknowledging that every victory comes from the Lord. Although God had promised countless descendants, Abram and Sarai remained childless for many years. As time passed, human doubt began to influence their thinking. Sarai suggested that Abram have a child through her servant Hagar. Ishmael was born, but this arrangement was not God's intended fulfillment of his promise. Even so, God cared for Hagar and Ishmael while making it clear that his covenant would continue through the son he had promised. When Abram was 99 years old, God appeared again and established his covenant more fully. God changed Abram's name to Abraham, meaning father of many nations, and Sarai's name to Sarah. The Lord promised that Sarah herself would give birth to a son despite her old age. God also established circumcision as the sign of his covenant with Abraham and his descendants. Although Abraham laughed in amazement when he first heard the promise, his laughter was not the laughter of unbelief alone, but of astonishment that God would perform such a miraculous work. Nothing is too difficult for the Lord, and his promises are fulfilled according to his perfect timing rather than human expectations. At this stage, if this video is interesting, take a moment to engage with it by liking, commenting, and sharing it. Even so, God cared for Hagar and Ishmael while making it clear that his covenant would continue through the son he had promised. God changed Abram's name to Abraham, meaning father of many nations, and Sarai's name to Sarah. The Lord promised that Sarah herself would give birth to a son despite her old age. God also established circumcision as the sign of his covenant with Abraham and his descendants. Although Abraham laughed in amazement when he first heard the promise, His laughter was not the laughter of unbelief alone, but of astonishment that God would perform such a miraculous work. Later, the Lord visited Abraham near the great trees of Mamre in the form of 3 visitors. Abraham welcomed them with generous hospitality, preparing food and providing rest. During their visit, the Lord reaffirmed that Sarah would have a son within the appointed time. Sarah overheard the announcement and laughed because she considered herself too old to bear children. The Lord responded with a timeless question that continues to encourage believers today. Is anything too hard for the Lord? Soon afterward, God revealed his intention to judge the wicked cities of Sodom and Gomorrah because of their great sin. Abraham compassionately interceded for the righteous who might be living there. He humbly asked whether God would spare the cities for the sake of 50 righteous people, then 45, 40, 30, 20, and finally 10. This conversation reveals both God's perfect justice and his abundant mercy. Although the cities were ultimately destroyed because of their wickedness, God remembered Abraham and rescued Lot from the coming judgment. Exactly as God had promised, Sarah gave birth to Isaac in her old age. The birth of Isaac was a miracle that demonstrated God's absolute faithfulness. Every promise the Lord had spoken came to pass. Abraham and Sarah rejoiced because the impossible had become reality through God's power. Isaac's name, meaning laughter, reminded them that God had turned their disbelief into joyful celebration. As Isaac grew, tensions developed between Sarah and Hagar. God instructed Abraham to listen to Sarah, while also assuring him that he would bless Ishmael and make him into a great nation. Abraham obeyed God's direction, trusting that the Lord would faithfully care for both sons according to his divine purposes. The greatest test of Abraham's faith came when God commanded him to offer Isaac as a burnt offering on one of the mountains in the land of Moriah. Isaac was the long-awaited son through whom God's covenant promises would continue. Yet Abraham rose early, prepared for the journey, and obeyed without hesitation. The book of Hebrews later explains that Abraham believed God could even raise Isaac from the dead, if necessary. When they reached the mountain, Isaac asked where the sacrificial lamb was. Abraham answered with remarkable confidence, saying that God himself would provide the lamb. As Abraham prepared to offer his beloved son, the angel of the Lord called from heaven and stopped him. God declared that Abraham had demonstrated genuine fear of the Lord by withholding nothing from him. Abraham then saw a ram caught by its horns in a nearby thicket. He offered the ram instead of Isaac. This powerful event points forward to God's ultimate provision of salvation through his own son. Abraham named the place "The Lord Will Provide," celebrating God's perfect provision and unwavering faithfulness. Because Abraham obeyed completely, God renewed his covenant with even greater emphasis. The Lord promised that Abraham's descendants would become as numerous as the stars in the sky and the sand on the seashore. Through Abraham's offspring, all the nations of the earth would be blessed. Christians recognize the ultimate fulfillment of this promise in Jesus Christ, through whom salvation is offered to everyone who believes. Sarah eventually died at an advanced age, and Abraham mourned her deeply. He purchased the cave of Machpelah as a burial place, securing a permanent possession in the land God had promised. Later, Abraham arranged for Isaac to marry Rebekah, ensuring that God's covenant family would continue according to his plan. Abraham lived to a good old age, full of years and blessed by God. He died in faith, trusting the promises that extended far beyond his lifetime. His son Isaac and Ishmael buried him beside Sarah in the cave of Machpelah. Although Abraham's earthly life ended, his example of faith continues to inspire believers around the world. The story of Abraham reminds us that God's promises never fail. His timing is perfect, his covenant is sure, and his power is unlimited. Abraham was not flawless, but he consistently returned to the Lord in faith and obedience. His life encourages every believer to trust God's word, even when circumstances seem impossible. Those who walk by faith, as Abraham did, discover that God always keeps his promises and accomplishes his purposes for his glory. Now, finally, before you leave, if this video is valuable, do not forget to engage with it by liking, commenting, and sharing it. Endeavor to watch my other videos, also to learn more. Goodbye, until my next videos.